The news arrived on a Tuesday. A phone call from the Maritime Division in Malabo. 3 sentences that ended 11 years of peace. Emeka Obi was gone. He had been supervising a multi-million-dollar bridge construction project over the roaring swamplands of the Benito River. A primary support pylon had been compromised. The scaffolding gave way, and Emeka, standing on the lower platform when the iron screamed, fell into the river. The Benito River during rainy season does not negotiate. The currents are deep, merciless, and fast. They searched the banks for 4 days. Boats, divers, local fishermen paid to walk the reeds. Nothing. Just a hard heart trapped in the reeds 5 miles downstream. Then the official report, the stamp of the Maritime Authority, presumed drowned, body unrecovered. Adaeze sat in the grand parlor of their Nnewi compound and stared at the document. This was the Obi family estate, 23 prime plots stretching from the main road all the way back to the quiet ridge where the old cashew trees stood. Her children had been raised here. Her husband's wealth was built into these solid walls. She was not without resources. Emeka had left her with liquid capital and a retained family solicitor, Barrister Okoye in Onitsha, a man who had handled every legal matter of consequence in the Obi household for 7 years. She had the law on her side. She had counsel on standby. But grief leaves an open flank, and Tobenna Obi, Emeka's younger brother, had been studying that opening for a very long time. Tobenna knew he could not beat Barrister Okoye in a modern courtroom. The legal titles were pristine, so Tobenna bypassed the city courts entirely. He brought the fight to the village dirt, where tradition could be weaponized. Within 3 weeks of the accident, Tobenna summoned the Umunna, the kindred elders. He laid heavy brown envelopes before the greediest among them. He argued that a massive active estate could not be left under the sole management of a grieving widow, while the first son's spirit was still lost to a foreign river. He said the land required an immediate male custodian. He said it was the ancient way. The pressure began as a whisper, an uncle visiting to suggest that if Adaeze used her city lawyers to fight the kindred, the Umunna would invoke a cultural injunction on the land, locking the gates, isolating her children, exiling her from Nnewi society entirely. Barrister Okoye could win in Onitsha, but no court order could make a hostile kindred open the gates of a compound in the middle of the night. That was the gap Tobenna was exploiting, not the law. The space between the law and the village. Then Tobenna stepped into the parlor himself. He folded his hands on the center table and spoke with cold, calculated precision. He told her the only way to preserve the peace, protect her children's inheritance, and keep the compound intact was a traditional marriage of convenience. He would become the male face of the estate. She would keep her home. He spoke as if he were granting her mercy. Adaeze looked at him. She saw the trap clearly. She needed time. She needed to protect her children. She needed Okoye to build the counter case without Tobenna knowing it was being built. And so, to buy herself tactical space, she signed. Tobenna did not wait for the wedding ceremonies to conclude. He began liquidating immediately, targeting properties outside Nnewi where Adaeze's lawyers couldn't slap down a sudden injunction. First went the commercial warehouse on the main road, sold to a logistics conglomerate. Then the prime commercial plot near the junction. He told Adaeze it was to clear structural debts from the bridge contract. It was a lie. There were no debts. By the 4th month, Tobenna had redecorated the entire estate. Gold-trimmed furniture in the parlor, a brand new luxury SUV in the driveway. He was erasing his brother's footprint from the earth. He fired anyone loyal to Emeka. Mama Chisom, the cook who had fed the family for 9 years, was run off after a fabricated argument over kitchen expenses. Festus, the veteran gateman, was dismissed without cause and replaced by an enforcer Tobenna brought from Onitsha. But Tobenna vastly underestimated the woman he had cornered. Adaeze had stopped weeping weeks ago. She was playing a much longer game. The moment Festus was dismissed, she met him secretly by the back orchard. She handed him cash from Emeka's private vault. "Do not leave Nnewi," she told him quietly. "Rent a room near the junction. Watch who enters and who leaves." She did the same with Mama Chisum, keeping her close, waiting for the wind to change. Every evening, she held an encrypted call with Barrister Okoye. Every transaction Tobenna made, every name he used, every document he signed fraudulently, Okoye received it all. They were building a case so airtight that when the moment came, there would be no gap for Tobenna to slip through. Then came the final piece. While searching the false mahogany panel in Emeka's study, a panel he had built himself on a rainy Sunday afternoon, whose code he had whispered to her once and which she had never forgotten. She found it, a handwritten letter, Emeka to Barrister Okoye, dated 8 months before his disappearance. The letter detailed an escalating dispute. Tobenna had severely botched a joint investment and was demanding the ancestral Nnewi land to be used as collateral to save himself from ruin. Emeka had refused. Tobenna had threatened him. The final line was the one that made her press her back against the wall and stare at the ceiling without blinking. "If anything happens to me, Okoye, do not let my brother near this compound. He is desperate enough to do the unthinkable." Adaeze did not confront Tobenna. She photographed the letter at high resolution, sent it to Okoye's secure database, and placed the original back exactly where she found it. She let Tobenna enjoy his loud, arrogant illusion. She let him believe she was defeated. She was not defeated. She was waiting. The traditional wedding reception was an ostentatious display of stolen power. Tobenna wanted the entire community to witness his absolute ascension as the new patriarch of the Obi family. 40 guests, politicians, elders, a caterer from Oka, a sound system that shook the window frames. Tobenna sat at the head of the long mahogany table, the table Emeka had carried on his own shoulders from a market in Enugu the year they moved in. Dressed in heavy royal lace, he laughed boisterously, pouring cognac for men who eagerly called him the head of the house. Adaeze sat at the far end of the table, silent, unmoving, her children held against her. It was 5:45 in the evening. Outside the compound walls, a tropical storm broke over Nnewi without warning, drumming hard against the roof, breezing the sky from pale gold to a deep breezed purple. The heavy front doors opened. A man stood in the entryway, backlit by the shifting storm sky, appearing first as a silhouette, rain-soaked, still, carrying a single tattered canvas bag on one shoulder. He stepped forward into the light of the parlor. He was dangerously thin. His skin was hardened, weathered by a depth of suffering that no one in that room could comprehend. A deep, jagged scar ran raw along his left jawline. Silence fell, not gradually, not politely, all at once, like a power cut in the middle of a scream. Tobenna was mid-sentence, crystal glass raised to his lips. His hand froze. His face did something grotesque. The smug arrogance dissolved instantly, his complexion draining to an ashen gray, his eyes stretching wide until the whites showed entirely. The crystal glass slipped from his fingers, shattered on the tiled floor. The man in the doorway did not look at the crowd. His eyes moved through the room until they found her, at the far end of the table, exactly where he knew she would be. When their eyes locked, the severe hardness of his face broke open. He became human again. He spoke, one word, raspy, deep, unmistakable. "Adaeze." She stood. She did not scream. She did not faint. She walked toward him with the slow, unyielding stride of a woman who had been rehearsing this moment in her soul every single night. She reached him. She placed both hands on his cold, wet face. She traced every new line of pain on his skin. She pressed her forehead against his and held him as he trembled. Behind them, the room collapsed. Elders dropped their cups. Guests scrambled backward, knocking over chairs. Someone was praying out loud. Someone else was already on their phone. Because they were not just looking at a missing man, they were looking at the impossible. Emeka Obi had survived the river. The sabotage had been flawlessly executed. A site supervisor paid by Tobenna weeks before Emeka traveled had compromised the scaffolding support over the deepest section of the Benito. When it gave way, Emeka plunged into the raging current, and the river swept him 7 miles, battering him against submerged rocks, tearing open his face until it deposited his unconscious body onto an isolated mud bank deep in the mangrove swamps of the border region. What followed was not a recovery. It was a war of endurance. No documents, no phone, lungs infected with river water. For the first 2 weeks, he could barely stand, crawling through brush, surviving on raw vegetation, keeping his heart beating by holding one image steady in his mind: his wife's face. It never blurred. Then the chain of human grace began. An elderly fisherman found him semi-conscious in the delta, took him in, fed him, used local herbs to break the fever that was trying to finish what the river had started. When Emeka could walk again, a nomadic timber merchant moving goods across the border agreed to hide him in the back of a logging truck, away from the local authorities Tobenna had quietly paid to report any survivors. Finally, a church mission in Calabar gave him clean clothes, a meal, and the one phone call he had been fighting his way back toward for weeks: Barrister Okoye. He had not gone public. He had not announced himself. He had moved in total silence, working with Okoye from the shadows, building what needed to be built, waiting until the moment was right. And now he was home. The storm outside kept every guest trapped inside. Emeka walked slowly down the full length of the table toward his brother. He did not raise his voice. He did not strike. The absolute calm in his eyes was infinitely more terrifying than rage. He set the tattered canvas bag on the mahogany wood. He unzipped it. He pulled out a thick, water-stained leather folder and slammed it flat directly in front of Tobenna. You thought the Benito River was deep enough to hide your hand, Tobenna? His voice was low, razored. You thought because the water took me, the truth drowned too? He opened the folder. This is the sworn affidavit from the maritime engineer in Malabo, the man you wired $30,000 to from your personal account 3 weeks before I traveled. He confessed the moment the High Court issued the warrant. He placed a stack of certified bank statements on the table. And these are the frozen accounts: every kobo from the warehouse sale, every kobo from the junction plot, tracked, flagged, locked. Tobenna's mouth moved. No sound came out. He looked around the room, searching the faces of the elders he had paid, silently demanding they speak for him. They were studying the floor. Then Adaeze stepped forward. She placed a second file directly on top of Emeka's folder. "And this," she said, her voice clear, ringing off every wall in the room, "is the emergency injunction Barrister Okoye and I filed 3 days ago. We documented every asset you touched. We named every elder you bribed. This marriage was obtained through fraud. It was signed under duress, and it is void." The oldest man in the room, the head of the Umunna, rose slowly from his chair. He did not look at Tobenna's face. He looked at the spilled cognac spreading across the mahogany. He shook his head, and he spoke 4 words in Igbo. "Tofiakwa, Ifuolauzo Tobenna. You have crossed the boundary. You have disgraced the bones of your father." The front doors opened for the second time that night. Festus stepped in from the rain. Behind him, a detachment of officers from the State Criminal Investigation Department. Adaeze had stationed them down the road an hour before the party began. The warrants were signed. The case was built. There was nothing left to say. Tobenna was lifted from the chair by both arms, his expensive royal lace dragged through the broken glass and spilled cognac on the floor. He did not speak as they walked him out through the compound gate and into the rain. By midnight, the storm had passed completely. The guests were gone. The ostentatious lights were dark. Only the low amber glow of the veranda lamp remained. Emeka and Adaeze sat together on the front porch, watching the thick night mist settle slowly over their 23 plots. The children were asleep inside. The compound was quiet. Festus and Mama Chisom are coming back first thing on Monday morning, Adaeze murmured, her head resting against his shoulder. Emeka nodded. He kissed her forehead. Good. The house needs its true rhythm back. They did not talk about Tobenna that night. That was a conversation for a different season. In the months that followed, Emeka and Barrister Okoye did something permanent. They re-registered the entire estate under a strict joint survivorship deed, both names indivisibly bound to the title at the State Land Registry. No relative, no kindred elder, no cultural pressure of any kind could ever attempt a takeover again without a direct, documented legal confrontation. The compound recovered slowly. Trust is not a light switch. Some business partners returned, some did not. The junction plot remained in recovery proceedings for over a year. But the house stood. The cashew trees on the ridge still stood. The children grew. There is an ancient unyielding truth in the red soil of Nnewi. Power built on lies can hold for a season. It can throw lavish celebrations. It can buy elders. It can sit at a dead man's table and pour his cognac for strangers and call itself a Petrac. But the ancestral ground is never passive. It is a witness. It holds memory the way old concrete holds heat. It knows the exact difference between the sweat of the man who built and the shadow of the man who stole. Benito Obi was convicted on charges of attempted murder, grand property deception, and corporate sabotage. 15 years, maximum security. Emeka did not attend the sentencing. Adaeze stayed home. They did not need to watch the final chapter of a thief's story. Instead, as the morning sun broke over the ridge, they walked the full boundary of their compound together. They kneeled down side by side in the red earth. They put their hands deep into the soil and they began to plant. This is the story of what greed costs. Not just the man who loses, but the brother who forgot that the ground remembers. We have come to the end of the story. I'd like you to tell me where you're watching from, where you're listening to us from. And I want to plead with you to consider joining our channel's membership and give us your subscription if you have not done so. Like and share the video to someone who may want to listen to these life-changing stories. Thank you very much and God bless you. Once again, don't forget to give us your subscription. Bye for now.